Welcome everyone. I'm excited to kick off this presentation. Today we'll be exploring the topic of introduction. This is our first slide, so I just want to warmly welcome you all and set the stage. We'll be covering the main points of our discussion, including the key objectives and what you can expect to learn. Keep in mind, this is just a quick overview to get us started. So let's dive in and get ready for an engaging session. Let's take a moment to recap what we covered in the previous lecture. We started by discussing the fundamental concepts that underpin our entire topic, making sure we understand the basics before moving forward. We also looked at some key examples to illustrate how these ideas work in real-world scenarios. Remember, these foundational points are crucial because they set the stage for everything else we'll explore today. By connecting these initial concepts to the broader theme, we can see how they fit into the bigger picture, helping us build a solid understanding as we progress through the presentation. So, what exactly is an activation function? Well, in simple terms, it's a mathematical function that we apply to the output of a neuron in a neural network. Its main job is to introduce nonlinearity into the model. This is crucial because, without nonlinearity, no matter how many layers we add, the network would just behave like a single-layer model. It wouldn't be able to learn complex patterns or solve intricate problems. Activation functions help the network learn and model these complex relationships in data. They are a key component that connects to the overall theme of making neural networks more powerful and capable of handling real-world tasks. Understanding activation functions is fundamental to grasping how modern AI systems work behind the scenes. So, why do we need activation functions in our neural networks? Well, the main reason is that without them, our models would just be simple linear transformations. That means no matter how many layers we add, the entire network would still behave like a single linear function, which limits its ability to learn complex patterns. Activation functions introduce nonlinearity, allowing the network to capture intricate relationships in the data. They help the model learn things like images, speech, or language more effectively by enabling it to model complex functions. Essentially, without these functions, our neural networks wouldn't be much more powerful than a straight line. They are the key to making deep learning models truly capable of solving real-world problems. All right, let's visualize this together. I'll draw it on the board. First, we have step 1, a graph with a straight line representing a linear relationship. It's simple, clean, and predictable. Next, step 2, a graph with a curved S shape which shows a nonlinear relationship, more complex, more flexible. Now here, the key point. Without activation functions, no matter how many layers we add to our neural network, the output will always be a straight line. That's a crucial limitation because it means the network can't model complex patterns without introducing nonlinearity through activation functions. So, understanding this difference between linear and nonlinear is fundamental to building powerful neural networks that can learn intricate data patterns. Let's take a closer look at the type 1, the step function. This is a fundamental concept often used in modeling systems that change abruptly from one state to another. Think of it like flipping a switch. It's either off or on, with no in-between. The step function jumps from 0 to 1 at a specific point, representing that sudden change. This is especially useful when you're trying to simplify complex processes into clear, discrete steps. It connects to our overall theme by showing how we can model systems with clear thresholds or decision points. Understanding this function helps us grasp how systems can behave in a straightforward, predictable manner when transitions are instantaneous. Now, let's look at an example involving a board work with a step function. Here, what we're seeing is a simple yet powerful illustration of how step functions work in the context of data modeling. Essentially, the step function jumps from one value to another at specific points, creating a piecewise constant function. This is particularly useful when modeling situations where changes occur suddenly, like switch states or discrete events. What's important to highlight is that the step function helps us understand how systems respond to sudden inputs or changes. It's a great way to visualize how a process can stay steady for a period and then abruptly shift to a new level. Connecting this to our overall theme, Understanding step functions allows us to better grasp how to approximate more complex behaviors with simpler, discrete models. They serve as foundational building blocks in various fields, from engineering to economics, where capturing those sharp transitions is crucial. So, keep in mind that these simple jumps can be incredibly powerful in representing real-world phenomena. All right, let's talk about the sigmoid function. So, a sigmoid is a smooth, curved function that outputs probabilities, which makes it really useful for classification tasks. The key idea here is that it transforms any input into a value between 0 and 1, perfect for representing likelihoods or percentages. The formula for the sigmoid is output equals 1 divided by 1 plus e raised to the negative sum. Now, e is that special mathematical constant, approximately 2.718, which is fundamental in exponential functions. When you plug in a number into this formula, it compresses the output into that 0 to 1 range, regardless of how large or small your input is. This property is especially helpful when you're trying to predict probabilities, like, say, the chance of rain being 90%. It's a simple yet powerful way to turn raw data into understandable, probabilistic outcomes. In the context of our overall theme, the sigmoid function helps us translate complex data into meaningful predictions, making it a cornerstone in many machine learning models. Let's go ahead and draw the sigmoid graph together. First, we'll start by drawing the x and y axes. These axes will serve as the foundation for our curve. Next, we'll mark 0 at the bottom of the y-axis and 1 at the top. This helps us visualize the output range of the sigmoid function, which smoothly transitions between these two values. Now, we'll draw a smooth S-shaped curve that begins near 0 on the left and ends near 1 on the right. This curve is what we call the sigmoid activation curve, and it's fundamental in neural networks because it introduces nonlinearity, allowing models to learn complex patterns. Keep in mind that this shape captures how the sigmoid function maps any real-valued input into a probability-like output between 0 and 1. This visualization is a simple yet powerful way to understand how the sigmoid function works and why it's so important in our overall discussion on activation functions. Welcome to Type 3, the tan function. This is another popular activation function in neural networks. What makes tan interesting is that it outputs values between -1 and 1, which helps normalize the data passing through the network. Because of this range, it often makes training more efficient compared to other functions like the sigmoid. Another key point is that tan is zero-centered, meaning its output can be positive or negative, which helps with gradient flow during backpropagation. However, it does have some drawbacks, like the vanishing gradient problem, especially for very high or very low input values. Despite that, it's still widely used in hidden layers because it tends to lead to faster convergence than sigmoid in many cases. Overall, understanding the tan function gives us a solid foundation for choosing the right activation function in different neural network architectures. Let's take a closer look at Type 4, ReLU, which stands for Rectified Linear Unit. ReLU is one of the most popular activation functions used in neural networks today. Its main idea is quite simple. It outputs 0 for any negative input, and for positive inputs, it just outputs the input itself. So, it's like a threshold that cuts off all the negative values, allowing only positive signals to pass through. This simplicity actually makes ReLU very efficient for training deep networks, because it helps mitigate the vanishing gradient problem, which was a big challenge with earlier activation functions like sigmoid or tan. By maintaining stronger gradients, ReLU enables faster learning and better performance. It's important to realize that ReLU's linear nature for positive inputs makes the network more expressive and easier to optimize. However, we should also be aware of issues like dying ReLUs, where some neurons can become inactive and stop learning if they consistently output 0. Overall, ReLU's balance of simplicity and effectiveness is a key reason why it has become a foundational component in modern neural network architectures, aligning perfectly with our goal of building efficient and powerful models. Now, let's take a closer look at this example of a neural network in action, specifically focusing on the RayLU function. Here, we're working with a simple boardwork example to illustrate how RayLU operates. As you can see, RayLU stands for Rectified Linear Unit, and it's one of the most popular activation functions used in deep learning today. The key point here is that RayLU outputs 0 for any negative input and outputs the input itself for any positive input. This characteristic helps introduce nonlinearity into the model while maintaining computational efficiency. As we move through this example, notice how the function transforms the input values, effectively rectifying the negative parts to 0, which is crucial for preventing issues like vanishing gradients. Connecting this to our overall theme, RayLU's simplicity and effectiveness make it a cornerstone in building deep neural networks that can learn complex patterns. So, understanding this example helps us appreciate why RayLU is so widely adopted in practice. Now, let's move on to Type 5, the softmax function. This is a crucial concept, especially when we're dealing with classification problems involving multiple classes. The softmax function essentially converts raw scores, or logits, into probabilities that add up to 1. Think of it as a way to interpret the model's outputs as confidence levels across different options. The key idea is that it emphasizes the largest scores, making the most probable classes stand out, while still giving a sense of uncertainty for the less likely ones. This makes softmax ideal for multi-class classification tasks, where we need to select the most probable category. Throughout this presentation, we've been building a foundation of understanding how models make decisions, and softmax plays a vital role in translating those decisions into understandable probabilities. So, grasping how softmax works helps us better interpret and improve our model's predictions. Let's talk about reinforcement and some common mistakes to watch out for. Reinforcement is a powerful tool because it helps solidify learning and encourages positive behavior. When used correctly, it can really boost motivation and engagement. However, it's important to be mindful of how we apply reinforcement. One key point is consistency. Reinforcing behaviors immediately and consistently makes a big difference in how well they stick. Another important aspect is choosing the right type of reinforcement, whether it's verbal praise, rewards, or recognition, depending on what motivates the individual. Now, as we discuss common mistakes, I want to highlight that over-reinforcing can sometimes lead to dependency or decreased intrinsic motivation. It's about finding that balance. Also, using reinforcement selectively or inconsistently can send mixed signals and diminish its effectiveness. Connecting this to the overall theme, effective reinforcement strategies are essential for ensuring sustainable progress and growth. Being aware of these pitfalls allows us to apply reinforcement thoughtfully, maximizing its benefits while avoiding potential setbacks. Let's quickly recap the key points from today's lecture. First, we discussed the importance of understanding the core concepts behind our topic, which helps us see the bigger picture. We then looked at the main strategies and techniques that can be applied in real-world scenarios, emphasizing how they connect to our overall goals. We also highlighted some common challenges and how to overcome them, ensuring you're prepared to implement what you've learned. Throughout, I stressed the importance of staying adaptable and always thinking critically. Remember, these concepts are all interconnected and serve as the foundation for the broader theme of continuous learning and improvement. So, keep these ideas in mind as you move forward, and don't hesitate to revisit any of the points we've covered today. Let's take a moment to consider some practice questions. These are designed to help reinforce what we've discussed and ensure you have a solid understanding. As you work through these, think about how each question connects to the overall theme of effective communication and problem-solving. Remember, the goal here is to apply what you've learned, so don't hesitate to take your time and reflect on each answer. Practicing with these questions will help you build confidence and prepare you for real-world scenarios where these skills are essential. So, let's get started and see how well you can apply the concepts we've covered today.